The holidays are upon us. It's an amazing time to meet up with family and, have some of those conversations about what it means to actually be awake. Not awoke, but awake. And what it is we want for the future of this nation. And what are we thankful for that happened over the last year? I'm thankful for a lot of things, a lot of accomplishments. I'm also thankful for all the amazing people that we are now joined by in this fight against medical tyranny and really just stupidity in general. One of the big people that has been so effective at using a political office to make a difference is Joseph Ladapo, the Surgeon General of Florida. He recently tweeted out something we've been talking a lot about recently, and it's this contamination in the vaccines. This is what he wrote. On today's episode of What the FDA, I asked at Dr. Califf, FDA, to address the DNA fragments detected in mRNA COVID shots and how they are hitchhiking into human cells. DNA integration into the human genome and oncogenesis are known risks, even acknowledged by a U.S. FDA in 2007. This is what that excerpt is from the letter itself, talking about the FDA. In 2007, the FDA published guidance on regulatory limits for DNA vaccines. In the guidance for industry, considerations for plasmid DNA vaccines for infectious disease indications, guidance for industry. This guidance for industry highlights important considerations for vaccines that use novel methods of delivery regarding DNA integration. It was all the way back in 2007, right? They were foreshadowing where we would be. Here's the actual guidance he's referring to. Theoretical concerns. Remember, this is the FDA writing this. Theoretical concerns regarding DNA integration include the risk of tumorigenesis if insertion reduces the activity of a tumor suppressor or increases the activity of an oncogene. In addition, DNA integration may result in chromosomal instability through the induction of chromosomal breaks or rearrangements. Sounds like really bad stuff, right? Well, it is, and we've been covering it, and there's been some alarming studies coming out and a lot of people talking about it. In fact, it seems like everyone's talking about it except the FDA. Well, I am just psyched to know that Dr. Ladapo is out there demanding some answers. And so it is my honor and pleasure to be being joined by the author of Transcend Fear, an incredible book, the Surgeon General for Florida doing amazing work, Joseph Ladapo. Dr. Joe, how are you doing today?
I'm great, Dale. Every time I get to see you, it's great. And Christmas time, so it's extra special.
It's perfect. It's really great. It's good to see you too. Always a pleasure. Once again, you're really putting some pressure on here from a position none of us really find ourselves in. I mean, we can reach out as lawyers, we can reach out as journalists, but you're actually in a space in government. You are, the health and fate of Florida citizens is in your hands. You're taking that very seriously, and I think asking really important questions. Let me ask you this. I mean, when we're looking at a tweet like this, you're going to get a lot of attention. What are the things that run through your head as you're planning on, reaching out, making a statement? Obviously, there has to be some, care with how you handle it. Are you backed by science? What made you feel bold enough to really address this issue in the way that you have?
Honestly, Dale, it's because it's a ghastly issue. This issue of the risk of DNA integration, it's something that historically has been very low risk, but it gets a little technical. But with these mRNA vaccines, you've got basically a passport into human cells. So whereas in the past, DNA would have a hard time ever getting into a cell, let alone getting into the nucleus of the cell, now you have these lipid nanoparticles that everyone was very excited about with the mRNA vaccines, that they carry mRNA in, but they almost certainly also carry DNA into the cells. So it completely changes the risk analysis. And this risk, however low it may be, is one that the FDA has acknowledged in the past, and somehow they think that they can get away with not assessing this time, and it's totally not going to happen.
You listed three very important questions you have. Let me read those. Let's just go ahead and read through those. Number one question: have drug manufacturers evaluated the risk of human genome integration or mutagenesis of residual DNA contaminants from the mRNA COVID-19 vaccines, alongside the additional risk of DNA integration from the lipid nanoparticle delivery system and SV40, that's the simian retrovirus 40 promoter enhancer? Has FDA inquired about any information from the drug manufacturers to investigate such risk? Let's just talk about this question. Breaking that down in layman's terms, what is your concern here with, lipid nanoparticle delivery, this SV40? What is it you're talking about, and what should, citizens be concerned about when they're looking at this?
Yeah, Adele, I got to tell you, I feel terrible talking about this stuff because I try to avoid dragging people through very technical scientific stuff. But it's important to be able to understand what's going on here.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try to explain it in a way that hopefully, whether you didn't have to major in chemistry or biochemistry to understand it. Everyone knows that DNA it's the building blocks of life, and in fact, it's from God. It's literally part of our connection with God, and the DNA is something that is important to preserve the integrity of. People are aware of the idea of mutations. Pretty much everyone's familiar with X-Men and fun stuff like that.
Yeah.
But on the serious side, it actually is important to protect DNA. If you don't protect DNA, say, for example, if you are hanging out in CT scanners or for whatever reason exposed to a lot of X-ray radiation, it can cause things like changes to your DNA. It can cause cancer. It can cause other problems. And in this particular case, the issue that the FDA, by the way, have themselves acknowledged in the past, the FDA has acknowledged this with other technologies, is that we just have to do our due diligence to make sure that when we are using technologies that have the potential to introduce DNA into our bloodstreams, which is something that happens with some biological medications and some
Yep.
vaccines and some other type of medications. We just have to do our due diligence to make sure that that DNA isn't ending up somewhere we don't want it to be, and especially that DNA isn't finding its way into our human DNA. Very simple stuff. And the problem here is that due diligence hasn't been done. And the FDA wants you and me to believe that that's okay. And that is not okay. And really, there are expletives for that. I mean, it's so disrespectful to God's work and creation to
Yeah.
not do your due diligence with this type of work.
I mean, I was sitting here thinking about, like, how would I describe it? It's almost like if you look at a blueprint for a house. Our executive producer, Jen Sherry, is building a house right now. What happened if your 3-year-old got in there and just erased a couple of retaining walls, and the house got built, and suddenly some of the structures that were supposed to hold your whole house together aren't there? I mean, that's just like an idea of this house could collapse. The entire way that we're built, that sort of blueprint for our life, is being potentially shifted, and no one at the FDA seems to care. Let's look at question number 2. All right, do current FDA standards for acceptable and safe quantity of residual DNA present as known contaminants in biological therapies consider the lipid nanoparticle delivery system for the mRNA COVID-19 vaccines? This is interesting because there's lots of studies now coming out about this floating DNA from the plasmids, the way they sort of made the RNA technology and was able to sort of multiply it. Now we're seeing that instead of it getting cleaned out as we were told the way the product's supposed to be made, we have all this residual DNA. And I understand you're asking, are we thinking about not only do we have these fragments of DNA, but we have this incredible delivery system that could be taking it, to places we don't want it? Is that essentially what you're talking about here?
Yeah, that's right, Dell. It's like if you're moving at the speed of science, sometimes people skip important steps.
Yeah.
And we certainly saw that with the trials that were done by Pfizer and Moderna, and we're seeing it now with the FDA. And this is just one example. I mean, obviously, there have been proper safety analyses that either haven't been released or haven't been performed by the FDA. But this is the risk of moving at the speed of science.
Right.
You're playing willy-nilly and loose with this risk of human DNA integration. And by the way, Dell, we only know about 1 or 2% of what our DNA does. The rest of it, almost all of our DNA, is a complete mystery known only to God. So it's just, I mean, it's even beyond reckless what we're seeing. But unfortunately, it's not surprising considering the track record they've accumulated in COVID.
Yeah, and the third question that you ask in this very important letter is considering the potentially wide biodistribution of mRNA COVID-19 vaccines and DNA contaminants beyond the local injection site, have you evaluated the risk of DNA integration into reproductive cells with respect to the lipid nanoparticle delivery system? There's a lot of anecdotal, call it anecdotal evidence of women having, issues with their menstrual cycle. I'm getting a lot of anecdotal stories about miscarriage. I mean, there's a lot of investigation that needs to be happening here. And to your point, it just doesn't seem like the FDA and the CDC or the NIH, these regulatory agencies that are designed to look into these things, they're not doing that. And it's so shocking because they know they rushed this product onto the market. They know they were taking a risk, but we're not in week 2 of release. We're not in the middle of COVID. Why are you still pushing booster shots when now time is telling us, and the science that is being done is saying, look, there's a contamination in here that we were told wasn't here, and it's in levels far beyond anything that have ever been approved, and you're doing no science on this and still promoting this product. I mean, I keep thinking to myself, Joe, that this is going to be written about. There will be somewhere out in the future, there will be a historical reference and a reflection on this, and they're going to say, what happened here? Why did all science stop? Why did so many professionals? Why was the Surgeon General of Florida the only Surgeon General asking questions?
Yeah, no, totally, Dell. There will be a reckoning eventually, and frankly, I think when the real damage has been totally accounted for, honestly, I'm not sure we're going to even have a Pfizer anymore. I don't think it's going to actually look the same way.
Wow.
The harm that has been done by these vaccines and the fact that this just basic work, hey, check, let's do the due diligence, let's just make sure, yes, I get it, it's small amounts of DNA, let's make sure that none of that small amounts, which by the way is equivalent to, based on some of the studies that are out there, billions of particles per dose of DNA, let's make sure it's not ending up somewhere like in eggs or in sperm, in a place where it could be heritable, could be passed on to offspring, or could cause other problems. Let's just make sure, out of respect for the human genome, it's not happened, and it will be written about. It's we'll see how. I don't know what the timeline is, obviously, but I think you're right on, Dell. This is going to unfortunately go down as a very sad point in history.
I think the most shocking about this issue when we look at it is we are not talking about a drug that was raced on the market that is for, stage 4 critical cancer patients. And, we're saying, look, what difference does it make? They're dying anyway. We're willing to take this risk. We got to get this out there. We are talking about a product that is given to literally, they would love to give it to every healthy human being on the planet, to not be doing your investigations there where you could be causing cancer. You could be and like you said, passing it on the offspring. I mean, if we do, this is what I keep trying to say to people, New York Times and people when they're interviewing me, is, look, I hope I'm wrong about all of the things that I'm questioning in this vaccine right now. But I will say this, if we keep using a vaccine technology and the propaganda that vaccines only work if everyone in the world takes it, and we keep rushing these products out without doing proper safety studies, we will eventually one day destroy this species. You cannot have a product that everyone takes and then go, oops, oh, sorry, contaminated everyone's DNA, no turning back now. I mean, it is so scary, this, level of recklessness.
It is. And this is what happens when you move at the speed of science, right?
Yeah.
And the rest of us just really need to say, hold on, keep your thinking caps on, and, let's think about what we're doing. And this has been happening throughout the pandemic, where people were rushing to close schools or rushing to close businesses, or rushing to mandate stuff to people who've already had COVID or don't want to put a new product in their vaccine in their bodies. And we need to stop moving at the speed of science with public health and really keep our sensibilities with us.
You are, looking out for the citizens of Florida. For everyone that's watching right now that doesn't live in Florida, what is your recommendation? If you were Surgeon General right now of the United States of America, what would you say to people that are looking at getting their next booster shot? What is your recommendation?
Well, I would, and I got to bring my boss into this because he's on the same page. I mean, this
Your boss
arena
being
of
Ron DeSantis.
Governor DeSantis,
Yep.
this arena of encouraging, pushing products that have obviously not been sufficiently tested to people who don't want them and often to people who don't need them, it must stop. And frankly, if I had the power, it would absolutely stop. I mean, it's just so wrong. People need to get back to the basics in terms of thinking about making sensible decisions. And we just need to, I mean, it's been one crazy decision after the next for the last 3 years. And you're just wondering, when's it going to stop? I mean, when is enough?
Yeah.
So absolutely, it would absolutely put an end to this completely reckless, drunken behavior that we're seeing, unfortunately, from our federal health leaders, CDC, FDA, all of them.
Well, it's a shocking moment in history, as we've said. Looking back, you will be one of those rare beacons of light and hope on the pages of what will have been a gruesome miscarriage of justice in science. And it's just good to know that you're out there. I love how outspoken you've been. And I love that you take time out of your incredibly busy schedule to check in with us here. So thank you for all you do. I'm going to let you get back to it.
All right. Merry Christmas. Happy
Merry
Hanukkah.
Christmas.
Merry Christmas,
Yeah.
everybody.
Happy holidays. Take care, Dr. Ladapo.